My name is Sophia Anderson. I'm 28 years old and I built my tech company out of a cramped college dorm room, while everyone around me told me to be realistic. And yet here I am on the day of my university graduation, my family watching from the stands, when a text from my father almost broke me. 4 years of sleepless nights, countless rejections and sacrifices I can't even describe, all leading to this morning when my phone buzzed twice within minutes. The first message crushed me. The second, it made history. If you're watching this right now, let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. And while you're at it, hit the like button and subscribe. You won't want to miss the rest of this story. It's a journey of turning rejection into the sweetest, most unexpected revenge success story you'll ever hear. Growing up in the Anderson household as the only daughter, with 2 older brothers, meant one thing: I was used to being overlooked. My father, Harold Anderson, built his construction supply company from scratch in the 1980s. He was a self-made man who prided himself on hard work, business instincts, and what he called traditional values. And in our family, tradition meant that business was for men. Women were there to support, not lead. From the time I could remember, my father poured his energy into grooming my brothers, James and Thomas, to take over Anderson Building Supply. Saturdays at the office, tagging along to supplier meetings, learning about profit margins, they got it all. When I was 8 years old, I asked to come with them one weekend. My father chuckled, patted my head and said, "This is boring stuff, princess. Go help your mother with dinner." My mother, Elizabeth, was the perfect corporate wife, always hosting dinners, keeping the house pristine, never contradicting my father in public. Privately, she'd whisper encouragement to me, but always with, "Don't let your father hear." I know she loved me, but she'd accepted her role in life and assumed I would do the same. By 3rd grade, I'd already developed a knack for math and computers. I won the state math competition, beating kids 2 grades above me. My father came to the ceremony but brushed it off as cute. When my teacher called our house suggesting advanced classes and mentorship, my father politely thanked her, and never brought it up again. By high school, I was teaching myself coding through online tutorials. I built a scheduling app for our school's extracurricular activities, and they actually implemented it. The local paper even ran a small piece about it. My father's comment? "Computers are just a phase. Real business is face-to-face." When my brothers turned 16, they each got a new car. On my 16th birthday, I got a laptop. For schoolwork, my dad said. Little did he know that laptop would become the foundation for a company, Secure Connect, a platform specializing in encrypted communication software for businesses. When it came time for college applications, I secretly applied to MIT. My guidance counselor helped me through the process, knowing my parents wouldn't support it. When the acceptance letter arrived, my mother was happy for me, but worried. My father's reaction at dinner? MIT? Why waste 4 years when you could be getting real-world experience? Technology is smoke and mirrors, and engineering isn't for girls. You'll struggle, get discouraged, and drop out. I looked him straight in the eye and promised, I won't drop out. After weeks of arguing, he reluctantly agreed to pay for my first year, with conditions. Maintain a perfect GPA. Work part-time to cover my own expenses. Call home weekly with progress updates. 1 year, he said. Then we'll see if this is worth my money. The night before I left for Boston, my mom sat on the edge of my bed. Your father means well. He just wants to protect you from disappointment. No, I said, folding the last of my clothes. He doesn't believe in me. She corrected me. He doesn't understand you. Maybe one day you'll show him. As I zipped my suitcase, I made a promise to myself. I will show him. The next morning, his parting words were, "When this tech fantasy fails, there's always a receptionist position at Anderson Building Supply." I stared out the plane window as my hometown disappeared beneath the clouds and silently vowed, I will never answer phones at my father's company. MIT was everything I'd dreamed of, and harder than I'd imagined. For the first time in my life, no one questioned whether I belonged because I was female. The only question was whether I could keep up. I took a full load of computer science and business classes while working 20 hours a week at the campus bookstore. My roommate Natalie joked she saw me conscious only twice a day, once in the morning rushing to class and once at night falling asleep over my laptop. By midterms, I was exhausted but thriving, and that's when Professor Alan Blackwell noticed me. He'd seen my encryption solution in a class project and asked, Have you thought about its commercial applications? I hadn't. I was too busy surviving. But his question planted the seed. By my second semester, I'd gathered a small team. Zach Torres, a quantum computing wizard. Diana Chin, a UX genius. Marcus Washington, a business strategist who could pitch anything. We started meeting in my dorm room every Sunday. Our goal was simple: build an encryption system for business communications that was both unbreakable and easy to use. When Professor Blackwell urged us to enter the university's $50,000 business plan competition, I hesitated, but we won first place. I sent the news to my parents. My father's reply? Playing entrepreneur on the university's dime, I see. Focus on your grades. That summer, I stayed in Cambridge to work on Secure Connect full-time. I called my father to tell him I no longer needed his financial help for my second year. His response: "So you're dropping out?" "No, I got a scholarship. I'll keep studying while building the business." He didn't congratulate me. Instead, he warned, "Businesses need revenue. Who's buying your program?" At that moment, we had no customers. But that would soon change. Our first client was a small financial firm willing to take a chance. That deal led to 5 more, then a dozen. By the end of my sophomore year, we had enough revenue to hire 2 developers and move into a real office. I was no longer just a student, I was a CEO. The summer after sophomore year, disaster hit. A client suffered a data breach. Their fault, but they blamed us publicly and threatened to sue. We had no choice but to find an investor to cover legal costs. Pitch after pitch ended in rejection. Until I met Catherine Bailey of Artemis Ventures. She listened carefully, then said, "You remind me of myself 20 years ago. Brilliant, determined, and underestimated. I'll invest $500,000 for 10%, and introduce you to the best tech lawyer I know." I almost cried. Before signing, she made me promise, "When you succeed, and you will, you'll help the next young woman with a big idea." I promised. That was the moment Secure Connect's trajectory changed forever. And the moment I began to understand that proving my father wrong was only half the battle. The real challenge was proving myself right. Catherine's investment didn't just save us, it transformed us. With legal troubles settled and a bit of capital in the bank, we could finally think about growth instead of survival. Catherine introduced me to potential clients, mentored me through tough decisions, and reminded me to play the long game. By the end of my junior year, Secure Connect had 15 employees and an office in Kendall Square. We had traction, but no one was handing us a golden ticket. Every contract was a fight, every hire a risk. The pressure was relentless. Some nights I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if I was in over my head. My father's voice, "Engineering isn't for girls. You'll drop out," would echo in my mind. But instead of crushing me, it pushed me harder. One evening, Jennifer Lawrence walked into my life. She wasn't the actress. She was a 52-year-old CFO with a resume that made investors drool. We met through one of Catherine's introductions. Jennifer took one look at our books and said, "You're growing too fast without controls. You'll burn out the business and yourself." It wasn't what I wanted to hear, but she was right. I brought her on immediately. Under her guidance, we overhauled our pricing model, implemented real cash flow management, and learned how to think like a company that would be around in 10 years. Not 10 months. Our first Fortune 500 client changed everything. It was a major financial services corporation, the kind that could put us on the map. When I called my father to share the news, I let the excitement show in my voice. "We just signed a 7-figure deal, Dad." There was a pause. "That's a solid client, but tech companies come and go. Are you profitable yet?" We weren't. We were reinvesting every cent into growth. When I hesitated, he said, "I thought so. Don't let this distract you from finishing your degree. You'll need something to fall back on when the bubble bursts." That was my father in a nutshell. The man could turn champagne into vinegar with one sentence. Jennifer urged me to delegate. "This company can't be built on one person's shoulders," she said after catching me asleep at my desk at 2 a.m. So I hired a CTO to lead engineering and a COO to handle day-to-day operations. Handing over control was like prying my fingers off the edge of a cliff. Terrifying but necessary. The payoff was immediate. I could focus on strategy instead of micromanaging code reviews or chasing late invoices. Our success caught the attention of bigger players. Some tried to poach our engineers with outrageous salaries. Others whispered that our security wasn't as airtight as we claimed. One rival even attempted to hack us. The irony wasn't lost on me, a security company under attack. But our defenses held. When our legal team sent a cease and desist letter, the attempts stopped. Through all of this, I stayed a part-time student. It was my silent rebellion against my father's predictions. By my 5th year, I was taking just 1 or 2 classes a semester. Then one spring afternoon, my academic advisor smiled at me from behind her desk. "You have enough credits to graduate this May. With honors." I was stunned. Between running a growing company and keeping up with classes, I'd lost track of how close I was. When my mom heard, she was thrilled. "Your father will be there," she promised. I wasn't so sure I wanted that, but part of me still hoped he'd see what I'd built and finally acknowledge it. At the same time, our board began serious talks about taking Secure Connect public. The market was strong and our growth metrics were undeniable. Jennifer warned, "It'll be exhausting. But if we move now, we could command an incredible valuation." The timing was surreal. The IPO prep would coincide almost exactly with my graduation. 2 milestones, one personal, one professional, colliding in the same week. The evening before my graduation, Jennifer called. "The bankers think we can price the IPO higher than expected. Demand is through the roof. We might be looking at $1 billion valuation on day 1. Billion. I sat in silence trying to process the number. After we hung up, a text from my mom lit up my screen. "We just landed. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. So proud of you." I couldn't help but wonder if "we" included my father. I woke up before sunrise. No word from Jennifer yet. My stomach churned with nerves, half from the ceremony ahead, half from the IPO pricing being finalized downtown. At 7:15 the call came. Preliminary price, $42 a share. That's $1 billion market cap. Final confirmation in an hour. I promised to keep my phone on vibrate during the ceremony. My heart was pounding as I walked to campus. My family was already waiting in the gathering area. My mom hugged me tight, my brothers offered quick congratulations. My father shook my hand like I was a colleague, not his daughter. No pride. No warmth. Just a formality. At 9:52, as the graduates lined up, my phone buzzed. Jennifer's message. Pricing confirmed at $44 per share. Final valuation $1.1 billion. Press release in 15 minutes. "Congratulations, Sophia. You did it." My knees almost buckled. I'd done it, we'd done it. At 10:15 the press release went out. Minutes later my father's text arrived. "Don't expect any help from me going forward. You're on your own." It was like a punch to the chest. On the very day I proved him wrong in every possible way, his message was still rejection. I didn't cry. Not here. Not now. That moment, standing in my graduation gown with my father's words burning in my pocket and the world finally recognizing my company, was the exact point where my life split in two, before and after. And what happened after would change everything. If you want to know how this day turned from heartbreak to the ultimate public victory, keep watching. And remember, your support means the world. Like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone chasing their own dream. The car door thudded shut behind me, and the city folded into a hush made of tinted glass and distant sirens. I watched the restaurant recede in the rear window, the brass handle catching sun, the blur of people coming and going, and my father's figure, small now, hands in his pockets as if he needed something to hold on to. It felt like the end of a long winter that had stretched across years. I had imagined this day 1,000 times and expected fireworks. What I felt was a clean, surprising kind of lightness. I didn't need him to name what I had built to know it was real. The ticker on a screen and the faces of my team, those were real. The code we had written when the world was asleep, real. The contracts, the audits, the architecture diagrams taped like puzzle pieces across dry erase walls, real. The text he sent me was real too, as sharp as a paper cut, but it no longer decided who I was. Traffic on Mass Avenue glinted with late morning shine. Bicycles threaded between buses. A couple in graduation gowns posed on a median while their friend, standing precariously on a fire hydrant, tried to find the right angle. Jennifer sat beside me, phone in one hand, a folder in the other, lines of numbers scrolled up the screen like a private fireworks show only our calendar could see. We're holding at 44 and change in the private window. Indications of interest are generous. she said, tapping a line with her nail. Her smile was the kind that starts at the eyes. CNBC wants the founding story tight, and Bloomberg is going to push on governance and sustainability. Naomi is waiting with media notes, and wardrobe pulled a jacket in case you want to read a little steadier on camera. I glanced at my reflection in the privacy glass. The cap lines still faint in my hair, the little tremor in my jaw that shows up when I haven't slept enough. I rolled my shoulders until the tremor eased and let my hands rest on my knees. Make sure the team sees whatever segment goes up first, I said. This belongs to them as much as me. Jennifer nodded. Already cued. Also, Catherine will call in 10. She said she wants to hear your voice before the cameras do. That loosened something in my chest. Catherine always had a way of making the next cliff look like a staircase. The car slid to a stop outside our building. The glass facade threw back the sky as if we had borrowed a slice of it for ourselves. Inside, the lobby smelled like the coffee our facilities manager preferred, dark, earthy, a hint of chocolate, and the hum of servers one floor below snuck up through the concrete like a friendly ghost. Naomi met us at the elevator with a garment bag, 3 index cards, and a smile that was professional in the way parachutes are professional. Congrats, she said softly like a secret. Your voice reads a little low on stress mics, so keep your chin up a touch and breathe through the first answer. Avoid the phrase female founder, unless you're flipping it. And say, we more than, not because you don't own this, but because it's truer. The green room wasn't really green. More eggshell with a sofa that looked softer than it was and lights that tried hard not to be fluorescent. A makeup artist swept a little brightness beneath my eyes. A sound tech clipped a transmitter to my waistband, apologizing when the wire tickled my collarbone. Through the half-open door I could hear our reception desk chiming with deliveries, and beyond that the rising and falling wave of our floor at work. Keyboards, chair wheels, the low rumble of a joke moving from desk to desk. I looked down at my phone. A dozen messages from numbers that had never texted me before. Names that had been closed doors last year were suddenly, congrats. Would love to connect soon. There were also messages that mattered. Zach with a photo of our first whiteboard sketch next to today's chart. Diana, who had stayed up all night iterating a 3-step onboarding we'd ship next quarter. Marcus with a line I could hear him say out loud, I told you we'd outwork their doubt. Naomi pressed the index cards into my hand. Bullet points, not scripts. Why we started, what we build, why now, who we serve. I breathed in and felt the rails of the story lock into place. The thing about telling the truth is that you don't have to memorize it, you just have to remember it belongs to you. The producer's voice came through my earpiece with the clipped kindness of someone who's been live 1,000 times. Sophia, you're up after the break. We'll see you in 4. We'll start with the founding story, move to growth, then a question about leadership at scale. If we have time, we'll touch on competition. Smile on the open, please. I smiled then, even though no one could see it yet. Jennifer squeezed my shoulder. You've already done the hard part, she said. This is just telling the truth out loud. The camera's tally light went red. The anchor smiled with the warm alertness of people who live inside televisions. The first question landed exactly where we wanted it. You started in a dorm room. Most dorm projects stay dorm projects. Why did this one become a company, and why do your customers trust you with their most sensitive communications? I let the silence breathe a half-second longer than comfortable and answered the way you talk to one person, not a million. We built what we needed and couldn't find. Encryption that real teams could actually use without a manual. Trust isn't a slogan, it's 1,000 small proofs. We earned it one deployment at a time by showing up when something broke at 2 a.m., by documenting clearly, by saying we don't know when we didn't and fixing it fast. We're not magic. We're meticulous. The anchor's expression changed in that subtle way interviewers reward an answer that isn't spin. The next question was sharper. There's always hype around security at IPO. 6 months from now, when the spotlight moves on, what keeps you from being just another ticker? Our customers' risk doesn't take a day off, I said. So neither does our roadmap. We measure ourselves against incidents avoided that could have been catastrophic. If you never hear about us again, that means we're doing our job. The third question reached for gender. You're one of the few women to take a cybersecurity company public. What should change so this stops being a headline? I didn't flinch. I'm proud of our team, full stop. The fastest way to make this ordinary is to fund more teams based on traction and technology instead of pattern matching against who led the last big win. Hire for excellence, build for reliability, and leave the door open behind you. I saw Naomi's hand off to the side, dip in a little arc. Good. When the tally light clicked off, my shoulders dropped in a way I hadn't noticed they were raised. The producer jumped back in my ear. Great hit. We'll pull a clip for social in 15. The makeup artist whisked past with a sponge like she was erasing something fragile that had settled on my cheek. I thanked her and stood. Jennifer had the Bloomberg notes already in motion. More governance there. They'll want to peek under the hood. Boards, committees, internal controls. We'll run the numbers but keep them human. I nodded and for a moment just let the room blur. The door clicked and Catherine's voice arrived through my phone, bright as ever. I knew you'd land it, she said. Now breathe. The first time you say who you are to the world says something back. Don't swallow it whole. What did you hear? I asked. I wanted her read more than anyone's. I heard a CEO who remembers which server rack she slept under, she said. I also heard a daughter who just learned that respect and approval are cousins who don't always visit on the same days. Let respect be enough. The rest will take its time. Her words brushed a switch in me that turned on a soft, usable kind of courage. I closed my eyes and let a memory rise because it wanted to. The dorm's stale radiator heat. The smell of old textbooks. Zach's laugh at 2 a.m. when our first prototype finally stopped throwing nonsense strings. Diana's hands flying above a trackpad translating impossible into obvious. Marcus knocking on the RA's door with a grin and a pizza because the campus cafe was closed and he'd promised us a win. Those nights made a shape in me that fit no one's expectations but mine. If you're watching this and you've ever been told you're cute instead of capable, drop where you're tuning in from in the comments. And subscribe not for this moment but for the next one, because the middle is where it gets interesting. We moved down the hall toward the second studio. 2 interns rolled a monitor cart out of the way with the choreographed panic of people who care about their jobs. As we passed the kitchen, someone taped a printout by the coffee machine. A screenshot of our ticker, a hand-drawn unicorn, and the words keep building in a marker that was trying very hard not to run out. I smiled without meaning to. A developer I didn't recognize looked up from her laptop. My aunt works at one of our clients, she said, half to me, half to her screen. She texted me after seeing the press release. We sleep better with your tool on our boxes. It landed with the weight of the only kind of marketing I believe in. Bloomberg's studio felt cooler somehow. More glass, more angles, the kind of lighting that made you check if there was dust on your jacket. The producer's question list sat on a tablet the size of a legal pad. We'll ask about your board composition, he said. Also how you plan to maintain margins if you keep such a high-touch service model, and whether your pipeline depends on 1 or 2 big customers. We had answers because we had systems. Independent chair, I said. Audit monthly, not quarterly. Red teams that report outside of engineering. And a pipeline that runs long and wide enough to let 1 customer at a time sleep in if they need to. The producer smiled like he'd just been handed a clean graph. Between hits, I stepped into the hallway and leaned against the cool of the window. Cambridge did what it always does. Breathed, moved, carried a dozen stories each block in 100 quiet gestures. A text from my mother buzzed. A simple line that somehow found the exact place in me that was still tender. Proud of you. Dinner tomorrow? Bring me to your office. I want to see where you live. I thumbed back. Yes. Come late morning. I'll show you the boardroom and the couch that pretends to be a bed. Naomi handed me a water with 2 slices of lemon bumping the surface. You've got a print reporter waiting in the lobby, she said. Says it'll be 5 minutes, which means 12. She's done her homework. She'll ask about last year's threatened suit. We've got the chronology, but your tone is the story. I nodded. It was a teaching moment. That's how we'll tell it. The reporter introduced herself with a handshake and a notepad. Old school in the best way. Her first questions were warm-ups. Product, team, roadmap. Then she stepped into the real thing without changing her voice. One of your early financial clients blamed you publicly for an incident that your documentation suggests was an improper implementation on their side. You settled. If trust is your currency, why is that not a crack? I didn't blink. Because trust isn't the absence of problems. It's what you do next. We updated our onboarding, tightened our checklists, and documented every step of every install. We also learned to say no to deployments that want speed over safety. We could have fought, but we decided to fix. Our clients sleep better because we did. She scribbled, looked up, weighed whether to ask the next question. Your father is prominent in a very different industry. Do his views influence yours? That hit in a place that wanted something to hold. They influence my expectations, I said. Then my work adjusted them. He built in a world where you could see the inventory you sold, where a pallet was a pallet. I build in a world where the most valuable thing is invisible until it fails. We both believe in materials that hold. Mine just happened to be math. Her mouth softened, the corner flicked up. Respect maybe. That's a line, she said. Keep it. By late afternoon, the building smelled like a bakery because someone had sent 50 cupcakes that proclaimed we did a thing in frosting that tasted better than it looked. I stood on a chair in the middle of the open floor because the room deserved to see itself as one thing, not a million moving parts. I don't have a speech, I said, because I didn't. Just this. Our work matters because people we will never meet rely on it to stay safe and sane. We'll make mistakes. We'll fix them. We'll keep the bar so high we need ladders. Thank you for trusting this thing when it was just a whiteboard. Also, please eat the cupcakes before security flags them as a trip hazard. Laughter broke the tension that celebration sometimes drags behind it like a tail. Hands thumped desks in the closest thing tech has to applause. As the day tipped toward evening, meetings replaced meetings. An investor check-in where I said, deliberate 4 times because speed had made our calendar forget what month it was. A governance call that clarified committee charters for the 3rd time because repetition is a kind of kindness to future crises. A Slack thread where an engineer reported a memory leak in a non-critical module and 5 people treated it like a museum alarm. Good. Let small alarms ring loudly. In the elevator between floors, I felt the tiny wobble that comes when metal remembers gravity. My stomach rolled once, then stilled. On my phone, a new message, James. A photo of my father's desk back home, the stapler aligned with military precision, a legal pad open to a hyper-organized list. James's caption, he called his broker. He's buying. I stared at the screen longer than the news deserved. In another life, it could have felt like reconciliation. Now it felt like a market fact filed under inputs, not meaning. I thumbed back. Thank you for telling me. Tour tomorrow? Bring mom. He replied immediately, we'll be there. Tom too. Dad has a flight. Of course he did. Later, in the quiet of my office, the building exhaled. The sun threw long rectangles across the floor, and the plant Diana put in my window last year had grown 2 new leaves I hadn't noticed. I sat at my desk, not to work but to remember how to recognize the surface of my own life. On the shelf behind me, the first server we ever owned, a squat, loud, faithful beast we never should have affection for but did, wore a sticker Zach slapped on the day it stopped frying our test data. The sticker said, nice try, Cass. I touched the edge of the casing like I was patting an old dog. My email chimed, the soft tone I reserve for all hands drafts because if you're going to talk to everyone, it should sound like an instrument, not an alarm. I started typing without editing for a while, just letting the shape appear. I wrote about the first night the dorm heat failed and we wore gloves to type. About the client who called us at 3 a.m. and how we decided to be the kind of company that answers. About the day we deleted more code than we wrote and understood that subtraction is also building. I wrote about responsibility as a muscle. Used daily, sometimes sore, never optional. I did not write about my father. Not because I was hiding him, but because he didn't belong in the story the team needed tonight. Before hitting send, I added a line we had earned the right to believe. If we do our jobs, some of our greatest wins will never make headlines. And that is our success story. At home, the apartment felt like a hotel room I hadn't learned how to live in yet. I set my cap on the kitchen island and laughed, just once, at how ceremonial objects look out of place next to a bowl of clementinas and a roll of blue tape. The kettle hissed. I texted my mother. 11 tomorrow? Wear comfortable shoes. She sent back 3 heart emojis and, somehow, a gif of a woman placing a crown on a cat. I didn't ask. Sleep came late and layered like music from another room. I woke before the alarm and watched the ceiling pin Ken. The city smelled like rain that had considered arriving and decided to hold. In the inbox. Congratulations, questions, calendar edits. A note from our auditor reminding me gently that exhilaration is not a control. I forwarded 3 things, delegated 5, and deleted nothing because today was not the day to pretend time was infinite. At 10:56, I stood in the lobby waiting for my mother and my brothers. The marble reflected my shoes as if to check whether I was where I said I'd be. They stepped through the revolving door in a single file that broke as soon as they saw me. My mother hugged me so tightly my ribs made a sound. "Show me everything," she said. I did. The boardroom with the table that looked heavier than it was. The engineering bullpen with the cable nests that our ops team swore were intentional ecosystems. The wall of customer logos we had printed small on purpose so we'd have to walk closer to see them. The quiet room where we keep 2 blankets because sometimes leaving and lying down can be the same thing. In the SOC nook, Thomas traced a finger along a dashboard graph like he was reading raised letters. "I thought you were." "I don't know what I thought," he said. "Dad made it sound." He let the sentence drop. "I should have asked you myself." I shrugged, not because it didn't matter but because some apologies should be allowed to be small so they can fit through the door. Before they left, my mother stopped in the lobby and turned to the receptionist. "She's my daughter," she said, proud and simple. The receptionist, who knows more about my schedule than anyone, smiled. We had a feeling. After they were gone, Jennifer appeared with a look that meant the news came in capital letters. "Your father sent a formal proposal through council," she said, passing me a printout with gray bars of email chain. "Board seat at his company. Language suggests he believes your business expertise would add discipline to their expansion. He CC'd both your brothers and 2 lawyers. Your move." I read it slowly. The letters didn't sting the way they might have yesterday. "Let's respond in writing. Thank him for the invitation. Decline the board seat. Suggest a meeting between our procurement folks and theirs to explore secure communication for his supply chain. Emphasize that my bandwidth is devoted to running a public company with fiduciary obligations." Jennifer's mouth twitched in a smile. "High road with traction. Copy that." By mid-afternoon, the market had done what markets do, moved and thought and second-guessed and congratulated themselves. We closed above the price enough to make the headlines use adjectives carefully. I walked the floor again because presence is information, and stopped at a desk where 2 engineers were debating a function name like it was a baby's middle name. "Call it what it does," I said, "and add 1 more test than you think you need." They nodded as if I'd blessed the code. Maybe I had. When the building thinned, I took the stairs to the roof. The door moaned the tired way doors do when they keep secrets for a living. The air smelled like warm metal and a threat of rain that still hadn't made up its mind. Below, the city kept choosing things: crosswalks, coffees, second chances. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A second buzz. "Catherine again. One more thing," her text read. "You won the right to decide what enough looks like. Don't borrow someone else's number." I typed back, "I'm learning the math. If you're still here watching, if something in this long day sounds like your day, tell me in the comments where you're from and what you're building. Hit like if you've ever carried something precious that no one else could see yet. Subscribe if you want to watch what happens when we decide that the quiet parts, the ones that don't trend, are the whole point." Night came soft and sudden as if the sky remembered a promise. I headed down the stairwell and stopped on the landing with the window that faces the alley where deliveries arrive. A janitor pushed a bin that squeaked on the same note every time the wheel completed a turn. He nodded up at me and I nodded back, and for a split second the entire company felt like that gesture. 2 people showing their work to each other, saying, "Yes, I see it." Back at my desk, I packed my bag slowly, making a ritual out of ordinary objects. A pen that only writes well in the middle of the page. A folded copy of the first contract we ever signed, kept for superstition or gratitude, I can't tell which. On my way out, I paused at the lobby display. Someone had rotated the slides to show a photo of us on day 1 in the warehouse. Cheap folding tables, a tangle of cables, a poster that read "Build Safer" in letters we cut from vinyl ourselves. I remembered how the space echoed when we laughed, how the winter came in under the dock door, how we learned to type in fingerless gloves. There was no audience then, no clasp of microphones, no questions about margins. Just stubbornness and a feeling in my bones that if we were gentle with complicated things, they might trust us enough to stay. The street was quieter than I expected for a day like this. I walked 2 blocks without checking my phone, a small rebellion against a world that checks for you. When I finally looked, there was a text from James. He watched the clip. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then he said, "You sound like you know what you're doing." It's his way. I typed, "Tell him the company needed a good construction metaphor today, but I was fresh out." James wrote back a single word that meant we were going to be okay for a while. Ha. In the apartment, I set the diploma upright against a stack of cookbooks I never opened and dimmed the lights until the room matched the speed of my head. I poured water into a glass and drank half in one go, the cold hitting my teeth like clarity. I opened my notebook, the paper one, not the kind that asks you to log in, and wrote 3 sentences I wanted to keep. Day 1 is every day. Outcomes matter, so do methods. Respect is enough. Approval is a luxury. I added a 4th and underlined it twice. Don't confuse silence for peace. Tomorrow, I would meet with our security team at 9, investors at 10, product at 11, my mother at 11:30 for a tour redux with questions she had saved on a small floral notepad. Tomorrow I would send a note to Catherine asking how she had drawn the first blueprint for a life that didn't need apologies to stand. Tomorrow we would run the play we had practiced for years. Listen harder than we talk. Patch faster than we brag. Choose boring reliability over clever risk. Leave the door open. Before sleep, I read the voicemail I'd ignored on the roof. It was, of course, from a banker I'd never met, speaking with the kind of confidence that makes other people hurry. Congratulations, Ms. Anderson. If acquisition conversations are ever of interest, we represent several partners who... I deleted it before the sentence finished. Not because it was wrong, but because it was early. There is a time to talk about exits and a time to water the plant in your window and notice, finally, how the new leaves are shaped. And that is where I am, right here at the hinge. The day when a diploma and a public ticker shared a calendar square. When a father's message found me and failed to tell me who I am. When a building full of people clapped for their own work and let me for a minute stand in the middle of it. Tomorrow we'll ask for different muscles. We'll bring them. If you've been with me to the end of this, tap like so I know you're out there. Subscribe if you want the next chapter without searching for it, and tell me, what's the line you're drawing for yourself between respect and approval? I'm still drawing mine, but my hand is steady. And somewhere, miles away, a man who taught me what stubbornness looks like will wake up, check a price on his phone, and wonder if value can be measured in money alone. I don't need to know his answer. I'm busy counting the kind that keeps people safe while they sleep. That's the math I came here to learn and the math I plan to teach by doing. The car cut through the evening like a quiet metronome, turn signals ticking in time with my heartbeat while the city unspooled on either side. Windows bright as pixels, sidewalks filmed with the afterglow of a long day. Jennifer rode beside me with 2 devices open and a legal pad balanced on her knee, drawing arrows between numbers as if she could rearrange gravity with a pen. Volume still elevated, she said, eyes skimming. Retail is sticking around longer than the quants thought. Mentions trending in 31 markets now. London is loud. Singapore woke up early. He glanced up to check if I was on the same page as the world. I nodded, but another image kept flashing in my peripheral vision. My father outside the restaurant, hands in his pockets, shoulders stiff with the effort of holding back something he refused to name. Respect and approval looked like distant cousins at a reunion, related but unable to share a table. CNBC's building rose at the end of the block like a luminous promise, its logo hovering against the indigo sky. A small crowd hovered by the curb. Some tourists, some reporters, a few students in gowns who had drifted here after their own ceremonies. Phones were already lifted before the sedan rolled to a stop. A man with a mic leaned in toward the cracked door. Sophia. Quick thought for the market on day 1. I caught the reflection of the boom light in his eyes and simply smiled, offering the practiced nod that says some answers belong to a different stage. Jennifer's hand, featherlight on my sleeve, approved the choice. Inside, cold air, hot lights. The hall smelled like coffee and the clean metal tang of equipment left on too long. We were steered into a green room that wasn't green, past a bulletin board carpeted in show rundowns and a whiteboard that scolded "No coffee" on the desk in a handwriting that looked surprisingly tender. A wall-sized monitor played the trading floor on a loop, hands, jackets, flashing LED strips. Our ticker moved like a quiet heartbeat along the bottom. A makeup artist dabbed my face with a sponge that smelled faintly of lilacs. "You're already camera ready," she said, and then added as if we shared a secret, "Don't lock your jaw on the first answer. People hear it even if they don't know that's what they hear." The producer slipped an IFB into my ear and listed the order with the calm of a pilot. Founding story, product differentiation, revenue quality, leadership, and one on family dynamics. "We'll float it. You can wave it off." "I won't wave it," I said before I decided to say it. Naomi, our comms lead, lifted her eyebrows but didn't object. The truth lands cleaner than a dodge when you've rehearsed telling it to yourself. The studio was a glass cathedral. The anchor's handshake was measured, his smile rehearsed to the millimeter. The countdown flowed through the wire. 3, 2, 1, and the red tally lit my face like a sunrise. The first questions were muscle memory. I talked about building something we couldn't find, encryption that didn't demand a monk's patience or a PhD to deploy, about shipping small and often, about the team that put their fingerprints, not their egos, on every line of code. Then he angled the conversation. Your father is a well-known businessman. Reports say he wasn't involved. Was that by design? A camera hummed like a refrigerator somewhere over my left shoulder. I took a breath and let the count of 1 fill the distance between us. My father builds with materials he can stack, I said. I build with materials you can't see until they fail. I chose partners who believed in what we were making before anyone else did. That's the design that mattered. The anchor's chin tipped by half a degree, the small bow broadcasters give when you refuse to let a question turn into a trap. Bloomberg ran cooler and faster, a winter lake under a high blue sky. Their producer wanted governance and margin mechanics, then pivoted to rumor. There's chatter a larger competitor is circling. Response. I smiled without showing teeth. We learned early that the best way to avoid being chased is to keep building the road you're on faster than they can map it. The reporter's mouth twitched. Somewhere in the control room I felt a producer underline a phrase. In the hallway between studios, a junior tech held a door with both hands like it was heavier than it looked. My mom's hospital uses your product, she blurted as I passed. I sleep better knowing her shift notes aren't leaking. I stopped and asked her name. Aisha, she said. Aisha, tell your mom thank you, and tell her we're the ones who are grateful she keeps showing up. Her eyes shone like she'd been seen, which is a better form of security than any cipher when it comes to the human heart. We left to the sound of printers and the climate control arguing with itself. By the time we pulled up to our building, the sky had tilted toward cobalt. The lobby doors parted and the sound hit. Cheers layered over cheers, that roar that happens when relief and pride discover they can harmonize. Confetti drifted like slow snow. A banner skipped across the mezzanine rail in our brand blue. We build what people trust. I let the applause wash over me in a way I hadn't allowed earlier. You can be humble and still let joy land on your shoulders. On the mezz, someone pressed a mic into my hand. The room quieted with the speed of a team that had practiced listening to one voice and then listening to each other. I could list the numbers, I said, but numbers blink. What doesn't blink is how you showed up at 2 a.m. and at 2 p.m., the way you filed bugs without blame and wrote docs like love letters to the next person on call. Today the market put a price on something we've known for years. Our work matters. And because it matters, you own it. Literally. Every one of you is a shareholder. The sound crashed like a wave. Miguel, employee number 5, lifted his cup and shouted something in Spanish I understood only as joy. 2 interns cried and then laughed at themselves for crying. Naomi, who never cries at the right time, cried exactly at the right time. Hours blurred. Hugs, photos, a cupcake that said we did a hard thing in shaky icing. The office thinned. In the quiet, I walked the engineering floor like I walk a beach, picking up the shells of a day and deciding which to pocket. A whiteboard still held the morning's war room sketch. Next to it, a sticky note someone had left for future use. Document the thing you wish you'd known. In the SOC nook, a dashboard pulsed with the unglamorous miracle of nothing on fire. I stood there a long moment, letting the calm rewire my synapses. Chaos had been a teacher. Quiet deserved a seat at the table too. In my office, the city was a constellation I could reach for but not touch. On my desk, a drawing from an intern, our logo orbiting the earth with a cape on. A folded card from facilities. Congrats, we ordered more coffee. A note from Zach. Remember when the power strip sparked and we decided that meant we were a real company? My phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize, and the words that arrived felt like stepping into a room you know by smell alone. I may not have agreed with your methods, but I believe in what you've built. Dinner sometime? Just us. No signature. None needed. My thumbs floated above the glass longer than the message deserved. As I typed, let me know when. The elevator ride down felt like decompression at the end of a deep dive. The lobby guard lifted 2 fingers off his book in a salute disguised as a stretch. Outside, the air held the promise of rain it never delivered. I walked without a destination, letting the city decide the turns. Passing a bodega, I caught my own face on a TV behind the counter, captions lagging by a heartbeat. The clerk looked up, clocked me, and did the slow smile of someone who likes a good story. "On the house," he said, pushing a bottle of water across the counter. I left cash anyway because sometimes gratitude wants to be heavy in your pocket. Back home, the apartment felt like a hotel you visit often enough to know which lamp flickers. I set the cap on the counter as if it needed to cool. The kettle clicked on. I didn't remember flipping the switch. I sat on the rug with my back against the couch, the kind of posture that tells your nervous system it can settle. Tonight, everyone would screenshot the graph. Tomorrow we would do the math. And in the thin space between, I let myself rewind to a dorm where the heater clanked and our breath fogged in January. We wrote code in fingerless gloves and celebrated a successful compile by stealing tea bags from the lounge. We learned the difference between speed and hurry, between clever and clear. We learned that the way you do the boring parts is the brand. Sleep came in tiles. I woke before dawn to a city that sounded like it had lost its voice. Coffee inbox. A note from audit about lockbox procedures written in a tone I could only describe as affectionate scolding. I answered with emojis I would never send investors and then rewrote the answer in the sober grammar of public companies. At 9 o'clock, a product stand-up. At 10 o'clock, investor touchpoint. At 11 o'clock, my mother and my brothers through the revolving door with umbrellas that had already surrendered. I gave them the tour like I was telling a story with rooms as sentences. The boardroom. "Yes, Mom, that chair does spin, but please don't test it while I'm on earnings calls." The engineering bullpen. "No, Tom, those cables are not a hazard if you don't trip on them." The quiet room where 2 blankets lived. "For naps?" Mom asked. "For not crying at your desk," I said, and she nodded with the understanding of someone who'd held her breath through other people's storms. In the SOC, James hovered over a dashboard, reverent. "It's like air traffic control," he whispered. "Only the planes are secrets." "They're trust," I said. He looked at me sideways. "You always had better words." In the lobby as they left, my mother turned to the receptionist and announced, not for the first time with me but maybe the first time with herself, "She's my daughter." The receptionist, who has watched me juggle calendars like knives, smiled. "We're very aware." After they were gone, I stood for a minute where they'd stood, measuring how a space can hold a different shape of silence after family leaves it. By noon, a whisper turned into a ping. On a security forum, someone posted a blurry screenshot claiming they'd found a vulnerability in a legacy module we'd deprecated a year ago. The thread had the sharp smell of drama. Naomi slid into my office, tablet angled. "It's gaining momentum." Mostly armchair analysis. One respondent with a handle I recognize from a vendor who hates losing RFPs. "Facts then kindness," I said. We pulled SEC Ops into the war room. Our red team had already tried to reproduce the claim and failed, then succeeded only when they contorted the environment into a shape no sane admin would deploy. Still, we treated the ghost as if it might be a wolf. We documented, ran a patch for completeness, and wrote a plain English statement that did not gloat. I recorded a 2-minute video in a conference room that still smelled like dry erase markers. "Trust doesn't mean nothing breaks," I said to the lens. "It means we tell you when something rattles, show you the screws, and tighten them with you watching." We shipped the patch, the post, and the video in under 2 hours. The thread slowed from sprint to stumble. In my inbox, a CTO from a client replied with a single sentence. "Thanks for being adults." To Catherine called. "You handled the rumor right," she said. "We don't fight gossip with volume, we starve it with clarity." Then softer, "Have you answered your father?" "Yes," I said. "We'll meet." "In a place you choose," she said as if that was part of the syllabus. "Neutral territory," I agreed. "And I'm bringing my own definition of apology." We met that evening in a diner that had been pretending to be retro since long before either of us was born. Vinyl booths, neon clock, coffee that tasted like 4 decades of coffee. He was early. He's always early. He thinks the world owes punctual people an extra minute of control. He stood when I approached, then seemed unsure whether to hug me or reach for my hand and chose neither, settling into a stiff nod that belonged to a conference table. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," he said. "Thank you for asking," I answered. The waitress poured coffee we didn't need but accepted like a truce flag. For a while we spoke in nouns. Flights. Schedules. Weather. Then we changed tense. I saw the interview, he said without clearing his throat for softness. You sounded capable. If approval was a doorbell, respect was the deadbolt, and he had finally turned it. I am, I said. I know. He folded and unfolded the paper sleeve from his napkin. I didn't understand what you were building, he said. I still don't, not fully. In my world, you can tap the thing you make. Stack it. Count it. Yours. He gestured vaguely at the air. My product is used, not touched, I said. When it works, it feels like nothing happened. He nodded like he was memorizing a new verb. A man from my association says your tool could harden our supply chain messaging. He spoke about it like a seatbelt. I understand seatbelts. I smiled, and it wasn't unkind. We can help, I said. Not because you're my father. Because you're a client with a problem we know how to solve. He looked at the menu as if it contained a map. There's a story in our family, he said after a minute, about my father telling me to stop dreaming and start pouring concrete. He wasn't wrong for his era. I assumed repeating that story made me a good son and a good father. I didn't consider that it might make me uncurious. The word landed like a coin on a countertop. Small, undeniable, paid forward. I didn't chase it. Silence can be a kind of mercy. The waitress returned. We ordered pie because sometimes progress requires sugar. Before we parted, he took a carpenter's pencil from his pocket and set it on the table between us. We used to sign big orders with these. Superstition. I picked it up. It left graphite on my fingertips that looked like ash and felt like inheritance. Come by the office tomorrow, I said. Not for a tour. For a meeting. Bring questions. In the morning he came. He wore the same suit as the night before, like armor that slept on a chair. We met with Jennifer and our CTO. He didn't pretend to know what Kubernetes was. He asked what happens to a message when a storm takes out fiber on the only road into a town that runs on one shift of electricians. We showed him redundancy diagrams, disaster recovery runbooks, and then we translated each back into the language he thinks in. Trucks, routes, bridges, detours. He exhaled once, the way people do when they realize the map is larger than the road they built. As he left, he held out his hand. You're running a real company, he said. The sentence contained no ifs. I know, I said. I can see it now. He stopped at the door. And you finished your degree. With honors, I said, and let the fact sit between us like an end cap display he couldn't ignore. He nodded once and was gone, leaving the scent of aftershave and the faintest outline of a rewritten story. Weeks passed not as a montage but as a list. Ship, review, revise, repeat. The stock learned to breathe instead of sprint. We hired 3 people we should have hired last quarter and paused a requisition we wanted but didn't need. A journalist wrote a profile that got the color right and the causality wrong. We sent a polite correction and a box of cupcakes because we are both soft-hearted and strategic. At night I stood at the window sometimes and counted the lit floors in neighboring buildings. On evenings when I saw only a few, I texted our managers. Send people home. We are not a company that wins by exhaustion. One Friday I walked into a conference room with a view of the river and signed papers that moved $50 million worth of my shares into a foundation trust. The ink felt heavier than its weight. We named it for something our team says when they fix a thing and make it simpler in the same commit. Secure plus humane. The first program funded scholarships for young women in cybersecurity whose families believed in them softly or not at all. The first recipient took my breath away. 19, from a county you only hear on weather alerts. A tinkerer with a second-hand laptop. A father who told her computers aren't a job. When we called to tell her, she cried the kind of cry that leaves your face new. This changes everything, she said. No, I said gently. You already changed everything. This just buys you time. Later, I returned to the auditorium where I'd graduated to give a talk. I stood behind the same lectern and watched a new set of faces do the math on what their lives could hold. Success isn't an argument you win with the people who doubt you, I said. It's a promise you keep with the person you're becoming. During Q&A, a student asked if my father had apologized. I told the truth. He respected the work. That's enough for me. Approval is nice. Respect is useful. Afterward, a line formed of people who wanted to tell me what they were building. A young man in a wheelchair explained an authentication flow that used breath patterns for people who couldn't easily type. A woman with bright purple hair said she was teaching her grandmother to use a password manager and discovered their conversations were really about what it meant to trust. I collected their stories like coins and left feeling richer than any day the market loved us. If you're still watching, this is the part of the story where the music usually swells and we fade to a skyline. I won't do that because easy endings make hard beginnings feel like failure. Here's what actually happens after the confetti is vacuumed. You answer emails you don't want and calls you didn't plan. You write 3 versions of a policy and ship the least poetic one because it will keep a stranger safe. You learn that leadership is 90% repetition with kindness and 10% choosing when to make a new rule. You learn that the door you walked through has hinges you can loosen for the next person. You learn your voice can be a light and a lever at the same time. Tonight, I'm back at the window with the city printed under glass. On my desk is the carpenter's pencil from the diner, the wood dented where thousands of signatures took a turn toward the tangible. Next to it is our old server sticker that says "Nice try, chaos." Between them sits the life we built. Stubborn, ordinary, miraculous. My phone buzzes with messages from people I love and people I barely know. One is from a high school teacher who says her student watched our IPO clip and decided to rejoin the robotics team she quit in January. One is from a nurse who says our product let her report a concern about a patient without fear that it would end up on Facebook. One is from my mother. Dinner Sunday? Book. I send 3 hearts and a thumbs up, and then because I am still her daughter I add, yes please. If this story lit even a small light for you, do something with it. Tell me where you're watching from. I read every city in town because it reminds me that the map is bigger than the road I know. Drop a comment with the one promise you're making to yourself this month. Say it out loud so the rest of us can hold you to it. Tap the like button if you believe quiet reliability is more revolutionary than loud promises. And subscribe if you want to be here for what comes next, because the next episode is the messy part 1 wish someone had shown me. Our first post-IPO scare, the fix we shipped in 12 hours, and the letter I wrote to my team at 3:17 a.m. that began, "We are going to do this carefully and we are going to do it together." I can't promise this will always be dramatic. I can promise it will always be true. The work we do is invisible when it works, and that is the most beautiful sentence I know about safety. Somewhere, a father is checking a stock price. Somewhere, a student is opening a terminal window for the first time. Somewhere, a nurse is sending a message that will keep a patient alive. Somewhere, your future is waiting for you to name it and then build it. If you need a sign, let this be one. Like the video so the algorithm knows to send this story to someone who needs courage tonight. Subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. We're going to make the quiet parts visible, one careful choice at a time. And if you're carrying something that no one else can see yet, I'm rooting for you. Keep going. I'll meet you there.